Welcome to Entrepreneurs, Executives, and Eccentrics, a podcast dedicated to the stories, strategies, and secrets of remarkable individuals. Join us as we engage in enlightening conversations with intriguing entrepreneurs, accomplished executives, and fascinating eccentrics, exploring their journeys, triumphs, and unconventional wisdom that has shaped their success.
I am nothing other than a great teammate, and I can't be anything but a great teammate unless I have teammates that are buying in that we are a team. And if we are a team, together, we can solve problems.
Get ready to meet Michael Levy, a visionary leader committed to building scalable collaborations that drive social impact and financial sustainability, with a focus on fostering collaboration at every level, from organizations to communities and individual lives. Michael is reshaping the way we approach problem solving in the 21st century. His work spans industries from healthcare to life sciences and education, emphasizing agile, purpose-driven approaches that prioritize trust, empathy, and profound impact of technology and data. Michael's mission is to create a future where collaboration is the key to thriving in an increasingly complex world. Michael Levy, welcome. Tell me what you do and what your company does.
Thanks, Scott. My name is Michael Levy. As you said, what I do is I'm on a mission to build scalable collaborations that drive social impact and have positive financial sustainability behind them at all levels, at the organization level, across communities, and within the individual realm of what community means to the self. Community drives collaboration, and collaboration is the currency of the 21st century. Hence, I'm on a mission to scale collaboration so we can all prosper in this new era.
Let's dig into that just a bit. Collaboration seems to be kind of you call it your North Star, right? Or it's kind of a foundational too, right? So in the healthcare space, let's go back 20 years. Let's go back to the aerospace industry, engineering space, right? We had this kind of world where we would all plan. We'd spend a year or two planning on what we're going to do. We would have specialists come in, and we would have these meetings after meetings after meetings. And then in 2 years, we'd actually start doing the thing that we planned on doing, right? The collaboration was terrible because it was just these little pockets of information understanding. Right. And now it's a different kind of agile world. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of how you use that in your organization?
Sure. Well, as you said previously and historically, if you look at the last 100 years, we haven't had the data information systems to free and connect us globally and locally to information across all aspects of life and of business. And so when we went out and set our goals, we had limited reference points for what was possible, what could be. So our visioning exercises were focused and limited, and we developed based off of a fixed resource bench.
And geography too. You had to be in the same room. You had to be in the same room. That's not real anymore.
That's exactly right. And so as we're seeing new 21st century winners, we're looking at what's different, and it's in the organizational culture and dynamics of how an organization works across the organization and across the communities that it services to build new information systems, new capability sets that may not have historically been internal, but now it's both internal and external in a very bi-directional manner, such that on a day-to-day basis, you're learning, you're applying what you learn, you're creating, and you're innovating. And that is magnified and amplified by how well you collaborate, because it is a multidisciplinary world right now, multi-complex construct of every problem we're solving. We can't just solve for profit anymore. We have to solve for the planet. We have to solve for purpose. We have to solve for people. And we have to build trust across our stakeholders, because engagement is delivered over time, not in a moment in time. And so when you look at what value looks like in the 21st century, it's how does my consumer or my customer, how engaged are they with my brand and my North Star? And so what we're seeing is collaboration is the mechanism to create versus to compete. And just like the blue ocean strategy, you don't want to go where sharks are and compete in a red ocean. You go and create. And so the fastest and easiest and most agile and lean manner to create is to collaborate, such that you're leveraging existing resources across a wide spectrum of geographies, capability sets, et cetera. You're either borrowing them or you're bringing them in through purchasing, acquisition, or simple partnership agreements. And we see this, as you said, all the time in essentially communities fusing together to solve a very specific problem.
I wonder if this also goes back to customer motivation. And let me describe what I mean by that. 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I just want tires, right, for my car. And now the customer motivation is I want tires, but I also don't want to burn the planet to up, right? I want tires, but I also want to think that the CEO isn't a bad person. I want tires, but I also want to believe that that there's not a factory somewhere where people are having to toil themselves to death to make the tires. Customer motivations, I think, are what's driving this complexity. I think that you're speaking to.
Totally, and I'll kind of highlight it in this framework, which is around Maslow's hierarchies of needs.
Right.
Fundamentally, we've evolved. We don't have the same hierarchy of needs. As a consumer, we have been essentially delivered goods in every form and fashion for the last 100 years, such that we no longer need the good. We need the purpose behind the good. Employers are struggling as well as consumer brands. And how do you engage and build trust with your core personas at the edge over time, right? And so it becomes a collaboration, a co-development cycle between the organization that should live and breathe for their persona of focus, whether it's that customer, that core user, or all the above, and match their realities, their day in the life of their persona. So empathy and connectivity and listening, these are the preambles, the lead indicators to collaboration, right? And so what great brands do, they understand who they're working for.
And the motivations of those customers too, though.
100%.
It never occurred to me. It's almost like Maslow's needs to be renamed, or a Maslow's 2 Electric Boogaloo. If you're, right? It's something different, right? It's completely changed.
What we can do with technology and data, leveraging data, is unearthing new metrics of success. I would argue that we need to see an evolution or a revolution to GDP being our economic indicator of success, because that only leads to a take, make, and waste economy, a linear economy. It says simply produce at all costs to drive up our economic production of a country, but don't take into account the health of your society. Don't take into account the health of the planet. And so what we're seeing from, like a MacArthur Foundation, circular economic models, one that outputs lead to inputs and inputs lead to outputs, is where the greatest value comes from in achieving that triple aim: planet, people, profit, right? And that has to do with collaboration. Back to our earlier conversation, Scott, the App Store is only successful because it realized the incentives and motivations on those app developers, the users that would meet the haves for the apps, i.e. the apps build around the users, and then Apple that services the middle tier that allows that to exist through a construct of incentives and motivations. We're seeing that. I mean, another example. Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, but it set the boundaries. Like we said earlier, it said, look, high, low, you can't have access to this information. An app can't do this. An app shall, well, let's go agile terms. An app shall do this. A feature shall do that. A feature shall do this, right? And the moment that an app goes out of those boundaries, it requires the app to notify the user, look, I'm going above and beyond what the App Store has prescribed me to do, which is I'm going to need access to your phone book, to your this, to that, to the other,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Right. But it sets the bare
100%.
minimum of standards, and then the user has the ability to go above
that. Governance that we've built trust around as a user and trust around as the supplier, i.e. the app company. And I'll take a step. Let's take a step back before the app even gets on to the app marketplace. There's a review process. There's a process to say, do you meet the standards of our community? And if so, we won't give you priority placement, but we will allow you to become priority based off of the user's demand, their alignment to your app, so on and so forth. And that is what a community of practice actually is. And you can form communities of practices around any specific area of interest that has density around a pain and a marketplace of suppliers.
So let's back up just for a second. If I were your prospective customer, who am I?
It's a great question. As it relates to incumbents, you're sitting in the transformation office and you're wondering how to align an organization to the next S curve of innovation and prosperity, understanding that technology and data is enabling new capabilities, but people and culture and process have to fundamentally change and lead the way. And you're saying, how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I build the operating model and deliver lasting change through step processes? So
it just feels like complexity on top of complexity, right? You're probably talking about the innovation officer. Like, who is that? Who is the person at that company?
It's a chief innovation officer, a chief transformation officer, chief digital officer, chief information officer. They're all after the same set of goals, and they all have pieces of the equation that need to fuse together to actualize their expectations.
Do you think they know this?
No.
What I'm getting
No.
is that
I'll
the complexities.
100%. Let's retract 100 years, right? And look at 1924. Okay, we're sitting in 1924, and there's 5% of the world that know the car is about to come out and totally transform transportation, right? And there's probably 1% of the world at that time that was thinking about the infrastructure needed to support the car to become the transportation transformation enabler. It wasn't until the mid-60s that Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Interstate Act that brought the car to every neighborhood in the US, right? And so the position we take at the Digital Health Institute for Transformation and Blue Door, the two organizations that I run, one a nonprofit that focuses on community pain and need and solving it. And then Blue Door is a consultancy that works with organizations to support them on their transformation journey. These organizations understand we are inversing our organizational culture and our means to execute from a bureaucratic organization to an adhocracy, which you said agile before. It's basically meeting the human agile narrative.
Okay, so let's go back just for a second. So 95% of the world doesn't know the car is getting ready to be a thing, right? It's 23. One is over. We're getting ready to sleepwalk our way into World War II. And 95% of the world is like, it was back to Henry Ford, right? They wanted a faster horse. You asked everybody what they wanted. So it's almost back to these innovation offices. They don't even know what they really want.
That's the point.
They don't see it or what they're trying to solve for.
Exactly. And I was lucky enough to have a position at the Center for Health Innovation at UNC from 2015 to 2018 before the pandemic, and studied intimately what digital health ecosystems look like and how they thrived across the globe. And it all came down to those that were winning in both solving healthcare issues and enabling and building capacity around digital and data. They had collaborative ecosystems. They had the ability to come together frequently, learn together empathetically, and act together from a co-development perspective. And this, the more they did it, the better they were in any form or fashion. So it became, how quickly and fast could you bring people together and turn the crank on discovery, co-definition, co-design, and co-development? And if you could do it over and over and over again, you're not only building the capacity of your constituents in a community or society, you're solving really complex problems by your crowdsourcing the resources and the intellect from those said people. So you're building a transformation engine and directing that engine towards the highest unmet needs in your community.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the you had said that before the informatica, right? Before we could store large amounts of data, analyze it, and do stuff with it. None of this is possible. Hell, we couldn't even work from home 6 years ago, right? That wasn't even.
Exactly.
Oh no, it's gonna kill collaboration, and it's and the higher ups really want to see, they really want to see the people in the in the office. But as it turns out, the person you want is not in your city. I promise. I
That's
promise.
right.
That person is not in your city. That's some. They're in Dry Crotch, Arizona, living in a town of 5,000, and they got a double PhD in something you need. And
Totally.
this new world we live in, it's actually making this possible for the first time.
Well, that's exactly right. So I studied, the major macro influencers across the behavioral, economic, environmental, governmental, kind of landscape, and said, in 2030, 2040, what does the world look like? And take a stat like W-2 versus 1099s. In 2020, it was 70% W-2s, 30% 1099s, and they're projected by early 2030s, it's going to be reversed, the reciprocal of. And so what is
What's
the
the cause of
relation?
that? What is that cause? Out of
Well,
curiosity, what is your thesis on the cause?
purpose-driven people are going to connect with purpose, like purpose-driven people. And so as an independent, I will find my community and then I'll work 7 jobs with 7 companies. But my purpose is going to be who am I solving what with that fuels me. That's the new need. That's the new base layer need in Maslow's if we were to reconstruct it. It's purpose. And this is where mental health is coming into play. We have very tough times societally right now finding purpose. And without purpose and without clear understanding of how my work is driving some North Star else, who am I?
It's just fascinating that it's complexity, and you start overlaying complexity, gets more complex, and it's like the social media would call it what this meta world, right? We live in this it's like a meta of this, like, more complex ideas coming together to form this new idea, and it's only feels like we just got here like a couple of years ago. Call it COVID. Are we going to look at that like COVID as the COVID enlightenment? Is this going to be the place where we realize that we could genome sequence like solutions to things, but we needed $1 billion to go figure it out, and COVID made it happen? I wonder, right? I wonder if that's the 100 years from now, that was the kink in the road.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's the first major, visible, tangible, and impactful jump from one S curve to another S curve our society has done. So when you look at a before and after event and what collaboration and urgency fueled, it was solving for the impossible immediately. And I think that is going to be the winning model. If an organization, or I'll take it down to a family. I don't. You said you had kids. I'll just speak for myself. But as a father and a husband, having 2 daughters that are 10 and a wife of 15 years, I am nothing other than a great teammate. And I can't be anything but a great teammate unless I have teammates that are buying in that we are a team. And if we are a team together, we can solve problems. And the world is so effing complex that you need to operate with as little bias, as little historical prejudice as you can to
Hmm.
not think about being right, but be effective. So, what is being effective? Right gets in the way all the time, but being effective allows us to become right over time.
It's just funny because you had said that collaboration is kind of where your start, but everything for you circles back to that ability to be a team player, to actually plug in the right place, and then also back to the W-2 versus W-2. I think what you're saying is that the humans that solve these highly complex problems, what they want to find their tribe and not be limited, right?
100%.
Geography limits everybody,
That is 100%. Because the reality is like me as a person, you as a person, Scott, if we adopt the agile continuous improvement model, we are always learning. We are always doing research. We are always implementing N of one opportunities. And if it works on a scale, we're scaling them commercially. right? And so we're going from education to research to quality improvement to commercial activities daily, which means fundamentally that we're not knowledgeable. We do not have knowledge of what we're going to be, what we are going to have access to a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. So why would I try to solve in a fixed mindset before I get to those stages? Right? We don't know who we're going to meet to fuel our ideas. We don't know what partner we're going to pop into on Google one day, right? And all of these new resources that are just at our doorstep because of the internet and because of customization to my lifestyle is going to be more accessible and more ready to be adopted. And so it's going to be up to the individual to say, can I learn over time? Can I apply implementation practices to see if these things could improve my well-being, my health, and if so, scale it and keep adding to it. And that's what the new value streams are allowing.
It kind of so you have your PhD, is that correct?
I don't actually. I have a BS in neuroscience from Tulane
Okay.
University and then a MBA from Elon University here in North Carolina.
The reason I ask is that, this idea that you ever heard of the Diffie-Hellman key exchange?
I have
It's a
not.
type of cryptography that was invented in the 70s. And what it is, this says that these two actors, rational or irrational, one could be evil, one could be a friend, we don't know. They need to be able to, without knowing each other and anonymously, exchange information that only they can actually. It became SSL, became what we know as HTTPS and such, but was literally done in a lab where computers weren't even invented, really. Right.
Right.
It was this idea that this research was being done by this for probably a PhD thesis, right? Probably for, whatever. And what I'm getting at is that there's certain pieces of these things that we don't even know we're solving for yet. We can't even imagine 5 years. And it used to be we couldn't imagine 20 years. And now I feel like I don't even know if we can imagine 5 years ahead of time.
Well,
Like that's compressing.
that's kind of the urgency I sit under, Scott. I mentioned the 20th century 1924 analogy of transportation, but in this century, transformation is going to be more dramatic, more upstream than it was, i.e., in the next 5, 10 years. And the cycles of transformation, what you were getting at a second ago, are not going to be decades. They're going to be 2 to 3 year jumps. Look at what ChatGPT did. That was a transformation. It's old now. The first launch of ChatGPT was, 18 months ago, not 2 years ago max, and it already feels stale. What's next? And it's coming. And so how do we as a society respond to that? And this gets back to, some of the indications of unfortunately, what some have defined as a useless class, which is a class that would be growing in the majority that don't know how to continuously improve and onboard new technologies and partners and capabilities to drive the future. We're not meeting the future, we're driving the future, right? And so if you're not driving the future, you're being left behind. And if you're an organization, you're Blockbuster, you're Circuit City, you're a very discrete Kodak, right? You haven't changed. You haven't changed. And so change means to give up and to release itself, to not have bias or prejudice of your preexisting notions. It's to say, shit, tomorrow might be a new day where a new thing comes and I'm asked to reform my understanding of myself. That's what we're dealing with.
So it's true. It's interesting you mentioned Kodak, and I think we may have mentioned that we talked about this maybe possibly last week, how they had the first digital camera that was like 20 pixels or some crazy
Right,
black and
right.
white, very, very low quality, right? And then they had the first patent, and then the next year they doubled it. The next year they doubled it again, right? They doubled again, they doubled again. But the CEO and the leadership of Kodak just saw zeros.
Right.
Right. They didn't see that exponentially speaking in 5 years, it was bazillions and trillions of quality, and then they missed the boat.
That's right.
There was a paper written and published called "Attention is All You Need." Have you ever heard of this before? It's the
No, but
T
I
in
love
transform. It's the T in transform.
it.
And
Okay.
it came out in 2017. ChatGPT was out in 2021. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. 4 years. This paper literally, none of this was possible. Google saw, I think they were researched at Google, and everybody all at once, Facebook, OpenAI, everybody was like, oh my God, that's the solution. We could always do this, but we couldn't do it fast enough to be valuable to a human. They could always do these incredible things they're doing with ChatGPT, but it was never fast enough. And the T and transform and attention is all you need is what that was the breakthrough. 4 years later, we're entering the AI, like may possibly golden age or maybe the end of the world. Who the hell knows? But what are your thoughts on that?
I have a very optimistic. I'm an optimist by nature, but I tend to look at intelligence a little bit differently than perhaps most people. I think our human intelligence is the second order of intelligence in our body, in our system, as far as we know it. I think gut intelligence, microbiome intelligence is much more significant and powerful to productivity of a human. And thus, when I think about AI, artificial intelligence, it's third order intelligence to me. And it's in, again, the collaboration of these systems working together intentionally to support growth and prosperity over time. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be definite losers in this equation. Again, I mentioned the useless class. I think there's going to be, a level of society that just is not going to be able to sustain the change and the rigor to learning and educating themselves to take advantage. And thus you're going to see dramatic disparity, even more so than it is today. But I believe that over time, and now we could have a whole nother conversation about time scale evaluation and understanding of how to manage and measure yourself against different time scales. But if I'm looking over centuries, I think, our human society will exist. It will evolve. We might look at a different type of sapien, going from human sapien to auto sapien, perhaps. But the reality is we can't, again, get stuck in who we are today. We've never been this way in history. We are who we are today, not 100 years ago. We're today. So to think that we're going to stay the same over the next hundreds of years or decades is the beginning of taking yourself out of the equation and building based off of what's available and what's best to reach your North Star. That's why, I operate under a purpose, passion, performance equation. You have to be in it for the long game to have the greatest chance of success.
Yeah, that one could call that a framework, right? That's kind of like you're like, hey, well, my default, I can quicker snap your decisions because does it fall within these four categories of things that I'm kind of doing. There was a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking. Have you heard of that before?
Oh yeah, that's one I hold dear.
Yeah, and it's that first chapter about there was this type. I want to say it was a Roman statue that experts that looked perfect. It looked absolutely perfect, but when an expert saw it from a mile away, they had a sickly gut feeling, almost a sickly feeling. They knew immediately. It's probably because they have this kind of framework that they live by already, and it fell outside of the framework, and it couldn't be real. To your point, the ability to kind of have that gut feeling, and I don't know, I think it comes down to having a framework.
Well, you look at the gut just to tease it out a little bit from a health and wellness perspective. 90% of the serotonin neurotransmitter is produced by the gut. That serotonin neurotransmitter is long-term happiness. It's not dopamine. Dopamine is in the brain, and that's short-term happiness. So when we eat, let's say, McDonald's, or anything with high saturated fats, high sugar intake, the dopamine short-term reward system is kicking in and saying, "Eat, feed me, feed me, feed me." And at the same time, that food is killing your long-term serotonin neurons that are produced by your gut. So your gut is becoming unhealthy. It's killing the chance at long-term happiness, back to health span. And at the same time, after which you're eating this stuff, it's saying eat more and more of it. So it's fueling negative cycles of intelligence from your gut to your brain. The other piece is 90% of inflammation is produced from the gut, right? Makes sense. And so when we're looking at what causes chronic diseases, well, inflammation causes chronic diseases more as a base layer of, a leading indicator. So you're saying, what's the importance of the gut? And I'll finish with this. 55% of the DNA in your body, Scott, is your microbiome. You're less human than you are microbiome.
Michael Levy, we're gonna finish on that. I could talk to you for hours, but I mean, I hope we'll have more of these conversations in the future. And thank you very much for coming on.
No, it was a great pleasure, Scott. Appreciate it.